Okay, guys, thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight we're going to be learning Parashat Shoftim. As you know, Parashat Shoftim is very connected to the month of Elul that's coming up, Be'ezrat Hashem, and it's that time. Almost time for Slichot. It's almost time for the high holidays. It's amazing that we're at that time of year. That's what Shoftim always symbolizes. We had the Biala Rebbe here last night. The Biala Rebbe said that Shoftim is very connected to Elul because Shoftim Shotrim, famous idea, Titen lecha bechol sharecha, the idea that that every person has gates on their head, right? And that's the ultimate. Hi, shalom, shalom. Everybody has gates, and you have eyes, you have ears, you have a mouth, you have your nose. Got 6 different gates. 7 different gates.
6 senses.
Right? 6 senses, know what I'm saying? You have your 2 ears, you have your 2 nostrils of the nose, you've got your 2 eyes, you have the mouth, and you have to put judges on each one of them to know sometimes the person has to shut the eyes, he has to shut the ears, or he has to close the mouth or open the mouth. You have to put judges on all of your gates. That's the famous pshat from the Shilah HaKadosh that the Biala Rebbe quoted last night beautifully. So that's definitely a reason that's connected to the parasha. I think I found another to the Chodesh Elul. I meant to say. I think I found another important connection. The Torah talks about the king. Torah talks about the king in this week's parasha, and it says like this: it says that a king must write for himself a Sefer Torah. Every king has to have for himself a Sefer Torah. He has to write for himself he has to have 2 Torahs, Rashi tells us. One that he has on in his treasure chest, in his treasury, and one that he goes and comes with. Imagine person that always travels, he has a Sefer Torah with him. The king always travels with a Sefer Torah. You understand the holiness of a Jewish king, which is quite amazing. So he has to have this Sefer Torah. So it says again, it shall be with him. V'karabo kol yemei chayav, he will read from it all the days of his life. Lema'an yilmad le'yir'at Adonai Elohav, in order that he should learn to fear Hashem, his God. Lishmor et kol divrei Torah azot, to keep all the words of the Torah, v'tachukim ha'ele, and the laws, and these laws la'asotam, to do them. Okay, if you look in the Ibn Ezra over here, the Ibn Ezra says, it says v'karabu b'sefer le'yir'ah, he has to learn to fear. Hu be'atzmo, meaning by him carrying the Torah wherever he goes, he himself will learn to fear Hashem. Then it says lishmor et kol divrei, to keep all the words. What does that mean? Ki hu yetaken, says the Ibn Ezra, hu yetaken hame'uvatim bekocho. He, because he is the king, now that he has fixed himself, Shalom Aleichem, welcome. Now that he has fixed himself, he has the ability to now fix the other crooked people with his strength. But the first step, says the Ibn Ezra, is that he's fixing himself. So again, the king has to write 2 Sifrei Torah. The first Sefer Torah he keeps at home, in his storage, in his treasure, in his where he keeps all of his jewels and precious things. There, he has 1 Sefer Torah. Then he has another Sefer Torah that he travels with. And again, the Ibn Ezra tells us, Le'ir'ah, this is that he should fear. Hu be'atzmo, he himself will learn to fear God. The king himself will learn to fear God. Then it says, Lishmor et kol divrei, he is going to then keep all the words of the Torah, meaning, Ki hu yetaken ha'me'uvatim, he will then go and correct all the other people around him that are what we call crooked, people that are not exactly 100%, bekocho, with his strength. But says the Ibn Ezra, the first thing he has to do is work on himself. He has to train himself to have fear of Hashem. And only thereafter, you have to ask yourself a question on this Ibn Ezra. A king has power without working on himself. A king has authority to do whatever he wants. He can go and he can just, whatever. He doesn't have to work on himself in order to exert his authority. But it sounds like what the Ibn Ezra is telling us is that the first thing he has to do is he has to learn himself Yirat Shamayim, fear of God. Once he does that, then with the power that he has, he can then affect the change on everybody else. But until he works on himself first, it won't work. You understand? That's what the Ibn Ezra is saying. So there's a very interesting discussion from none other than the great Chafetz Chaim. The great Chafetz Chaim was quoted as saying that when he was younger, he said to himself, I want to fix the entire world. I want to change the world. And then he saw that it's very hard to do that. So he said, I want to change at least my country. My country should be people that are God-fearing, wonderful Jews. And he said, that's also very hard. He left it. He said, at least my city I should change. And that didn't work either, right? So he said, maybe at least my family I should change. That also, right? But he says, but myself, I could change myself. And that he did. And he says that afterwards, it had an effect on his family, it had an effect on the city, it had an effect on the entire neighborhood surrounding him, but he worked on himself first. So that's the famous quote of the Chafetz Chaim. But there's actually a little bit more background to this story. The background to the story is that the Chafetz Chaim once told over this in the form of a mashal. He said that there was once a particular chassid, pious man, that he decided that he's going to go to the capital city, and he's going to go to the biggest shul there, and he's going to speak in between Mincha and Arvit and start to give musar. And that's the connection, by the way, between this and the month of Elul. Month of Elul is a month where we have to work on ourselves to grow, right? That's what the king has to work on himself. We all have to work on ourselves, right? So this fellow says, I have to go to the capital city to speak in the main synagogue over there between Mincha and Arvit. He goes, he asks for permission to speak. They let him speak between Mincha and Arvit. And he's going on about how people have to become better and have to fix themselves, have to do this and have to do that. People in shul start getting a little bit uncomfortable. They start twiddling their thumbs. They say, what is this guy talking already? He probably just wants us to throw him a few bucks. Let's throw him some money. Let him go and get out of here. So can you imagine? This person is standing there talking to them how they have to, go and become better. Surely enough, people start throwing a few dollars at him. He's like, what's going on over here? He leaves, he walks away. He says, I guess, maybe people in the big capital city, maybe it's too hard to work with them. Let's go to a smaller city. Again, he left his family on a mission to make a change in Am Yisrael. So he goes to a smaller city. He now approaches the Gabayim of this shul, and he wants permission to go ahead and to, speak in between Mincha and Arvit. And again, he gets up and he's fire and brimstone. He's talking about how they have to change, how they have to become better. This and better than that, etc., etc. People again here, right? Big problem. This guy's not stopping to talk. It's a problem always. People don't like long speeches. Anyway, so this they see him talking. Okay, they throw at him a few dollars. They say, "Okay, buddy, thank you. You did your job." Next, the guy is going crazy. Not the big city, not the smaller city. He says, "Let me go back to my own city. What am I going other places?" He goes to his own city. He starts, makes the effort. People in shul know him. Everybody knows this guy. He says, enough is enough. We got to change this. We got to change that. And he's talking and he's yapping away, and everybody is saying to themselves, what is the story with this fellow? Maybe he should go to his own home and say musar to his wife and to his children. What does he want from us? So he hears that, and that's what he does. He goes to his own house, starts talking to them, and they say to him, what? You want to make us into tzaddikim gumurim? What do you want to do? What are you doing? Abba, what's the matter? He says, you know what? Forget about it. This chassid, says the Chafetz Chaim, decided to lock himself in his room for a couple of decades. Very rarely did he come out. He sat and he learned the entire Shas, the entire Poskim, all the halachot. He learned everything. He wrote books, he wrote things and whatever. A few decades passed by, and then he decided to try again. And he sent a letter to the rabbi of the big city that he went many years before. He says that Chassid was told, sure, come. He went to that city, and by the time he got off the train, thousands of people were there greeting him. That was the Chafetz Chaim story. In other words, the person worked on himself, groomed himself, taught himself, made himself better, made himself stronger. Then he didn't need to look for publicity. The publicity came to him just by the fact that he became so strong and so amazing. Thousands of people were lining up. That was the story that Chafetz Chaim told about Chassid Echad, one particular pious guy. The Brisker Rav heard this story, and the Brisker Rav said that you should know, whenever the Chafetz Chaim told the story about a particularly pious man, Chassid Echad, he was referring to himself. Right? That's how that got out. So you should know the Chafetz Chaim wanted to do good, but he saw it wasn't working. Then he realized, if I work on myself, change myself, become stronger myself, that's how I can have a positive effect on everybody else around me by working on myself. Yeah, exactly. But so it's a little bit more. It's saying that by himself working and growing on making himself better, that had an effect on everybody around him. The Sfat Emet talks about this in Parashat Ki Tetzeh, and he explains that this is the meaning of the mitzvah of returning a lost object. He says, somebody loses something, you know who it belongs to, you have a mitzvah to go and to help this person by giving back his lost object. Go and return it. He says the deeper meaning, though, is that sometimes a Jew could be a lost object. Hashev teshirem le'achicha means bring him back. Bring back that lost object. How so? It says, when you yourself do teshuvah, says the Sfat Emet, you work on yourself, you become better. So because all of us are interconnected, all of the neshamot of Klal Yisrael are one big web of neshamot. So when you work on yourself, you automatically help other people to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though you never picked up the phone and said anything to them. You never called them. You never said a word to them. You're making yourself better. That, because we're all one, has an effect on it. It's like a bunch of people that are on a boat. And some genius drilled a hole in the boat. And now the boat starts taking on water, right? So that's the guy that is doing things haphazardly. Then there's a wonderful man who says, wow, we're taking on water. Let me plug the hole, right? So you didn't need to talk to anybody. You just plugged the hole. You did something that benefited everybody, right? That's the thing. We're all part of one big body of people, one big body of neshamot. So you working on yourself helps everybody else. That's what the Ibn Ezra is saying. The king working on himself, learning Yirat Hashem, how to fear God, actually has an effect on everybody else around him. Now he can affect the change because he worked on himself. Understand? That's the idea the Chafetz Chaim is telling us over here. Very important idea. Now, you should know, by the way, that's the idea of, that's musar, right? Sometimes people, they want to go and they want to give musar. They want to go and start telling you, hey, you got to do this and you got to do that. I would tell you should know. People don't like criticism. Nobody likes to be criticized. Nobody wants to be told that they're doing something wrong, even if they know they're doing something wrong. But naturally, we tend to reject criticism. We don't like it. If a person's looking for it, he wants constructive criticism, that's one thing. But if you just go and offer your opinion, usually the response is not going to be a good one. They don't like to be criticized. Yeah, I just say it in a nice way. Remember the rule, divrei chachamim benachat nishmaim, which means the words of the sages are always said in a manner that's peaceful and relaxed and calm and not threatening and not hostile. You see, sometimes people do things in a hostile way. It doesn't come off properly. And it's a lesson for all of us to remember that as well. And you should remember that people tend to think when they hear musar that it should be the other guy who's listening. I can't tell you how many times I gotten up to speak about a subject, and then people come to me and say, "You should know, you spoke about that subject, but half the people that needed to hear that were not here." Meanwhile, that guy himself was the exact guy that needed to hear. You know what I'm saying? That happens a lot because everybody thinks it's the other guy. The greatest of the sages always think that when they hear somebody speak about something, they're actually talking to them. Like, for example, there was a story with Rabbi Levine. This was the father-in-law of Rav Eliashiv. He was a very great tzaddik in Yerushalayim. Did a tremendous amount of chesed for so many people. Anyway, he was once approached by a woman who was having shalom bayit problems with her husband. So she asked him, maybe, my husband comes to your shu'i, maybe you could speak about shalom bayit and how important it is, or whatever, and how to treat your wife nicely. So he said, sure. So next class that he gave, he spoke about it. And at the shiur was none other than the great Rabbi Isser Zalman Meltzer, who was the father-in-law of Rabbi Aaron Kotler, the Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood. So Rabbi Isser Zalman Meltzer was a tremendous tzaddik himself. And he heard the shiur that Rabbi Aryeh Levine gave about Shalom Bayit. And he comes to him after and he says, Rabbi, I know you were talking to me. I know that your full intention was on me. Now, meanwhile, he's a tzaddik. His wife is the happiest woman on the earth. There's nobody happier than her. I know you're talking to me. I have to be better. I have to talk nicer to her. He didn't need the musar, but in his mind, he thought that the rabbi was talking to him. Meanwhile, the other guy, it was in one ear, out the other ear. He didn't know anything. I have no idea what you're talking about. Right? So that's the thing. Most of the time, people don't want to hear it. So when you do give the musar, so the first lesson that we're learning is, first of all, we have to ask ourselves, did we work on ourselves first? Did we make ourselves better? When we go ahead and talk to other people, can we, honest to God, say that we have improved ourselves enough that we're ready for that? And then when you do deliver it, Be'ezrat Hashem, you do it in a very positive way. Talk about the positive. Talk about the things that will encourage people, and don't do it in a way that will, at least humbly, that will frighten people. In other words, this, then you're gonna burn. Right? Right? If you do this, you do that, etc., then it's so. Now, is that true? Yes, it is true. Unfortunately, there is punishment, 100%. On the other hand, who needs to talk about that? Talk about the positive. Talk about the fact that somebody does good, he's gonna have olam haba. He's gonna benefit from ziva shechina. There's gonna be endless reward. You can focus on things that will encourage people, appeal to their intellect and to their desire to do good. Okay, now, Rabotai, we have in the Parashat a discussion about Tamim Tihiyeh im Hashem Elokecha, which is a pasuk that we need to talk about a lot. It means you shall be Tamim, which means you're not going to look for ways to get around the fact that we don't have knowledge of the future, and the fact that we don't know what's going to happen, and we're kind of in the dark about things. You're not going to go to what we call an ov or a yidoni, or doresh el hametim, people that are necromancers, sorcerers, that can conjure up different things and feed you information about the future. But rather, that's not what Hashem wants. Tamim, you shall be pure. Hitalech imo bitmimut, Rashi says. Go in simple faith with Hashem, your God. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. So over here we have the prohibition of ov. I ask you, gentlemen, what is an ov and what is a yidoni? Anybody know? Right, but I'm saying specifically. This is a very interesting Mishnah. Let's go to it in Masechet Sanhedrin. Yes, they are revealing the future. Let's take a look, Rabotai. This is Mishnah, Masechet Sanhedrin, Perek Zayin, Mishnah Zayin. Okay? Baal Ov. Okay, so this is chapter 7, Mishnah number 7 of Masechet Sanhedrin. What is an Ov? So this is called Ze Pitom. Okay, this is a fortune teller. Okay, and look what he does. Says Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tenura, Lokech Gulgolet Shel Met. He takes a skull of a dead body. After the flesh has decayed, umaktirla, he offers up incense to it, veshoel mimena atidot, and he asks the future from that skull, vehi meshiva, and that skull answers back whatever the question was. Okay, now
I'm sorry. What did he take it?
What?
What did he take it?
A skull.
Human skull?
A human skull.
Oh,
he takes a human skull. He offers up incense to it. The skull has no flesh on it. It's just skull, just the bones.
Okay.
He offers up incense to it, and then it says that's hamidaber mishechio. The voice comes out of his armpit. Very interesting, right? The voice of the whatever is talking will come out of his armpit.
Is the person asking?
Yeah. Now, Yidoni over here is a little bit different. Let's read the rest of the Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tenura. Yesh she'osim she'yashiv hamet derech bet hashechi. Some people do it that they bring the dead. Actually, the voice of the dead body will come out through his armpit. Now, Yidoni is very interesting. Says Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tenura, Chaya sheshma yadua. There is an animal that its name is called Yadua. V'tzurata ketzurat Adam bepanea v'yadea v'raglea. It looks like a human being in its face, its arms and its legs, and it says v'hi mechuberet betabura lechevel hayotze min hashoresh hanishrash ba'aretz. It's attached to the ground by a rope, a natural rope that attaches to the ground. So it's kind of like a rope from the belly, and it's running around. It looks like a human being, actually. That's what it says here. When you want to trap it, they shoot at this attachment, this kind of like umbilical cord to the ground. It gets cut off from the ground and it dies. A trapped human being. That's what the Chachamim call it. Okay. Now they take this thing, and over here, this is, they take the bone from this animal, right? And they put it in the mouth of the guy who's doing the sorcery, and the bone starts to speak from his mouth. That's called Yidoni. So we have Ov. Ov is the guy who offers up to the skull some kind of incense or something, and then the voice comes out of his armpit. Then you've got Yidoni, and the Yidoni is a fellow that takes the bone from this kind of human-like animal and puts it in his mouth, and that's how the dead person talks, through the bone in his mouth. So they connect with the dead in these different ways. Clear? That's called Ov and Yidoni. So you can imagine the dead have a knowledge of what's going on in the future and things like that. There's actually a Gemara in Masechet Brachot that says that somebody once came to a cemetery and he overheard two neshama talking to one another, and one guy said to the other, whoever plants at the beginning of the year is going to get messed over. It's going to be a disaster. There's going to be a huge tornado. It's going to wipe everything out. And then the guy didn't plant in the first half of the year. Everybody else lost everything. He was the only guy in the market with produce because he waited till the second half of the year. And then next year he came back and it was the opposite. Everybody had planted in the second half. He planted in the first half, and he got everything. So they know. The Gemara says they have knowledge. So here's this guy, and he wants the winning lottery numbers from the dead. So he goes to the Ov and Yidoni. Now that's a violation of what it says. Tamim tiyeh Hashem Elokecha. You can't do that. You're supposed to go with simple faith in Hashem. If Hashem wants you to be a millionaire, you'll be a millionaire. If Hashem wants you to whatever, you'll get it. You have to have faith. That's the way Hashem wants it to work. Pure faith in Hashem. So over here, there's a very famous question. The question has to do with King Shaul. King Shaul made a big boo-boo in his lifetime. He was the first king in Am Yisrael. But the big boo-boo that he made was when he was told to go and wipe out Amalek once and for all. So he did two things that were wrong. He was told to kill men, women, children, and animals, and instead he left behind the animals and he killed everybody else with one exception, the king. The King Agag of Amalek, he left behind. He didn't kill him. He managed to procreate in one night, thus giving life to the offspring of Amalek, and that's how we got Haman, and that's how we got Hitler, and that's how we got Imachnu, all the people that wanted to kill Am Yisrael from Amalek in all the generations. So Shaul was reprimanded very much by Shmuel the Navi. Shmuel came to him the next day and he says, "Well, why do I hear sheep?" He says, "What do you mean? We took the sheep to offer them as sacrifices to Hashem." So Shmuel told him, "What do you mean? You think Hashem needs your sacrifices?" He said, "Kill everybody." And little did he know that Amalek had this magical power. They could transform themselves into animals. So a lot of them had actually still been alive, just in the form of animals. Hashem said, "Kill them. Don't play games." Hashem said, "Kill them, right? You didn't kill the sheep. You made a big mistake." So he says, "Yeah, well, the people were pressuring me. They said that they want to do it." And I said, "Okay." He says, "Who asked you? Hashem gave you a commandment. You were supposed to do it. And you say to them, 'Sorry, but I have a mitzvah to wipe everybody out.' And that's it. No questions asked. Because you didn't do that, you're not going to be the king anymore. It's going to be David HaMelech." He didn't tell him it's going to be David, but he himself didn't even know. But the point is that Hashem knew already there's another person that's going to do a much better job. His name is David ben Ishai. He's going to be the one to be the king. Okay. For a very long time at this point, Shaul, who was a fantastic king until that point, and people loved him, he was in a very bad state. He was in a state of depression. He was in a state of almost going crazy, where David was somebody that everybody had loved because David was a very strong soldier. He had killed thousands of Plishtim, and Shaul started to get worried about David taking over. Indeed, Shmuel went and privately made David as king. He made him king over the whole Jewish nation, but nobody knew about it. He didn't go around making a ceremony. Nobody had any idea. Everyone thought that Shaul is still the king. But it was something that people only found out later. But be it as it may, Shaul at this point had a lot of fear from David, and David never wanted to touch him. As a matter of fact, David ended up sparing his life at least twice. And Shaul tried killing David multiple times. Time after time, he attempted to kill his life, to take his life, and David was miraculously spared. There was a city that hid David. Evyatar, who was the Kohen Gadol at the time, well, he was somebody that was the son of the Kohen Gadol, was in a city called Nov, and they hid King David. They protected him, and they gave him food, they gave him a sword, and Doeg HaEdomi was there. He saw that they helped David. He went to Shaul and he told Shaul, they helped David. They gave him food. They gave him a sword. And he said, what? And Shaul went and killed the entire city of Nov, and it was all Kohanim over there. There was only one Kohen left. That was Evyatar, and he took the Urim v'Tumim, which is the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, that whenever there's a national issue, you go and you ask the Urim v'Tumim, and then the letters start lighting up, and that's how you get the answer from Hashem. So he took that and he ran. That's all he had. That was one of the last Kohanim that existed. So Shaul killed the entire city of Kohanim. Now at this point, I'm just going to skip a lot of stories in the middle, but at this point, Shaul is at a loss because the Plishtim are now attacking the Jewish people. And Shaul doesn't have any help. He doesn't have any prophet because Shmuel at this point is dead. He sent messengers to not fight. He doesn't know what to do against the Plishtim. The Urim v'Tumim does not respond to him. And he doesn't have any help. He doesn't know what is he supposed to do. He's in trouble, right? So he resorts to something which is absolutely wild. He goes and he finds a ba'alat ov, which means a woman who is an ov. This is a lady that's doing what we said. She takes the skull, she offers up incense to the skull, and she has the voice of the dead person coming out of her armpit. Now, the irony here is that Shaul, the Navi, tells us it was his life's work to get rid of these people from the land. He's a Torah observant Jew, and he chased after them, and he made sure there isn't one single Ov or Yidoni in the land of Israel. Everybody has to go, right? And this was like the one lady that was left over. And he goes to her, he disguises himself, and he says, "Listen, I need you to do something for me." She says, "What do you want me to do?" He says, "I need you to bring up a dead soul." She says to him, "Don't you know that King Shaul is against this? And if I do it, they're going to find me, they're going to kill me, they're going to this, they're going to that, right?" So he says, "Don't worry, nothing will happen to you, I swear." And she says, "Who do you want to bring up?" He says, "I want to bring up the Navi Shmuel. I want to talk to Shmuel." So, okay, she does her thing, and she brings up the Navi Shmuel. Now she sees that when Shmuel comes up, a very interesting thing. Shmuel, normally speaking, when those souls come up, they come up from their feet first. When it came to Shmuel, he came up from his head first, so that he could bow down to the king Shaul. Very interesting. So even in a state of being dead, and he's about to actually give him hardcore musar, "Why are you doing this?" Right? But he needed to show honor to the king, and he bowed down. Very interesting. So he comes up and he asks him, "What do I do? The Plishtim are coming to attack us." So Shmuel says to him, "Why do you think I'm going to give you an answer right now? Don't you know Hashem is upset at you for what you did, but you didn't kill Amalek, and you didn't do good, and the Urim and Tumim aren't answering you. There's no prophet to help you because you did bad things, right? So why do you expect me to give you an answer right now?" And then he tells him the bad news. He tells him the answer. He says, "Tomorrow, you're going to be with me. Yani, you're going to lose. You're going to die in the war. You and your sons are going to die in the war." So he was terrified from that. He could barely move after that. And surely enough, he was killed in the war. Now, the big question over here is, how on earth could Shaul do something that's a death penalty? Shaul was a tremendous tzaddik. That's why he was king in the first place. That's why David never wanted to kill Shaul. David had two opportunities he could have killed him, and he didn't do it because he said, "How could I lay a finger on Mashiach Hashem, the one that God chose to be the king? I can't touch him." He would never do it because he was such a righteous man. He just had this little moment of craziness. So the question is, Rabotai, how could Shaul do this? Now, I had a chidush tonight as I was preparing for this, and I thought to myself, it's amazing that a lot of times the name of a person, you could see a certain act from his name that he's going to do. Many times that comes up in the Tanakh. Like, for example, Ruth is the gematria of 606 because as a Gentile, she had 7 mitzvot, and then she converted 613 mitzvot. Right? Many times the name has a meaning of like the life story of the person. Here, it dawned on me, Shaul is the exact same letters as Shoel, which means asking the Ov and the Yidoni. Right? He actually got to the point where he asked a question from the Ov, from the person that does this idolatry. I mean, it's like in his name. It's kind of crazy if you think about it. So, how can he do this? You understand the question? Yeah, the question is clear. How can he do this? So the first answer that I saw was that this is from the Radbaz. The Radbaz says that the answer is there's something called, like we mentioned earlier, Hora'at Sha'ah. Hora'at Sha'ah means it's not something which is always permissible, but if there's ever a great need, which in this case, he felt that there was a great need because it's a lot of Jewish lives on the line. In other words, he wants to know, should we fight? Should we surrender? What are we supposed to do? I'm going to be putting people to death. I can't do that. And I don't have any help from the Urim Tumim. I don't have any help from a Navi, a prophet. I don't know what to do. So this was his last resort, and he felt that for the sake of the national security, he's allowed to do this. That was something that he felt he was permitted to do just that one time only. That's how he answered that question. That was one shot that I saw.
But he go against Hashem.
He
Again.
Couldn't ask Hashem.
What?
He go against.
He tried. He tried. He asked the Urim Tumim, and he got no answer. He tried. See, the big problem here was that there's a reason that he did not get an answer. The reason is because he had messed up. He had done certain things wrong. Now, what do you do in that situation? You have to work on yourself and do teshuvah. And hopefully, when you improve yourself, then Hashem is going to say, okay, he did good. Now I can answer him because he made himself better. But he didn't do that. Instead, he went down this road. So that was the big problem over here. But the first shot that I saw is that he felt he was halachically allowed to do it because as a king, the responsibility of the whole nation is on him and the lives are on the line. And he felt that Hashem would permit it just this one time. That's what, in a way, he compared it to what Eliyahu Hanavi did when he offered up offerings outside of the temple when you're not allowed to do that, in order to disprove the prophets of the Baal. You can't do that. Are you allowed to sacrifice outside Bet HaMikdash? Can't do that. But Eliyahu did it on Mount Carmel, which is way outside of Yerushalayim. Why? To disprove the prophets of the Baal. So everyone says that was what we call Hora'at Sha'ah. It was a momentary dispensation. It's not allowed. But for this, it's allowed. He felt the same thing applies here. It's not allowed, but this is different. That's how he looked at it. That was one pshat. The other pshat you can find in the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh on this week's Parashat addresses this exact question. He asks, how on earth could Shaul do this? And he says, the answer is because it says that when is it a problem to go to the Ov or the Yidoni? It's a problem, he says, according to maybe what Shaul thought, the giveaway was from the fact that the Torah says, because you have other prophets to go to, real prophets of Hashem, that tell you what Hashem wants. So instead of going to that prophet, right? So you're going to this Ov, that's a problem. But Shaul didn't have that option. So if there's no other option, he doesn't have Urim Tumim, he doesn't have prophets. So therefore, the isur to go, the violation of going to this kind of sorcery doesn't exist anymore because the other options of a regular prophet are not there. That's how he explains Shaul's behavior, right? So that's the idea. Shaul felt he was allowed to do it because he had no prophets, and the pasuk itself tells us that Hashem says, I will establish a prophet for you, right? And you will go to him, right? It says, Navi mikirbecha me'achecha kamoni yakim lecha Adonai Elohecha elav tishmu. So the Orach Chaim says, Shaul asked, why did it have to say, I will give you a prophet from your brothers, like me, Moshe says, and you listen to him? Because it's only a problem to go to the Ov, the sorcerer, when you have another prophet to go to. Instead of going to the right guy, you're going to the wrong guy. But Shaul said to himself, but if I don't have anyone else to go to, then the Torah never said I can't do it. So that's the second way of explaining what Shaul did. Either way, he was wrong. He was wrong. But the point is that that's what he was thinking. That's the Ov and the Yidoni. Now, the big question that everybody asks in this case is there any validity to an Ov or a Yidoni at all? Meaning, is this what they call mumbo jumbo? Meaning, it's all fake, phony baloney, right?
That stuff doesn't exist today, no?
Correct. That stuff doesn't exist today. However, neither does prophecy, right? We know that there is no prophecy at all. It doesn't mean though that it never existed. So the question over here is there anything even remotely close to truth in this type of behavior? Is Shmuel Hanavi really coming and being brought back from the dead to speak to Shaul? Yes or no? That's the question.
It's kind of like witchcraft.
Right.
You would think it's like a witch.
Right. But the question is, bottom line, is Shaul actually speaking to Shmuel? Yes or no? That's the question. Is Shmuel's neshama talking? But as you can imagine, as in any other subject, it's a machlok. It's a dispute between the Chachamim. Rabbeinu Bachya brings down what? Right. So Rabbeinu Bachya brings down 4 opinions. Okay. The first opinion that he brings down is the Rambam. The Rambam was Mr. Rationalist. The Rambam was the most rational person. He felt that you always have to follow pure logic and nothing that is, if you don't have to go into supernatural, then we don't go into supernatural. So the Rambam says the following: the whole thing is a hoax. It's nothing. It's garbage. It's phony baloney. Thank you so much. So how do you explain it? What happened? So she said, so he explains what happened over here was that this was all fake, right? Now, what then did they do to make it seem real? So every Ov would have a partner in crime. The whole thing is fake. But they have somebody in the back, voice coming out of some spot, and that partner starts to say things. Yeah, I'm Shmuel, and you did this and you did that, and maybe they set it up in a way that the voice comes out of a certain spot, or who knows what. But they put on a really nice show. That's the way the Rambam learns.
How come when Shmuel come up, he go to shower, and the he didn't know that he shower. Right? She didn't know that.
So good question. The Rambam says she knew a show. She was putting on a show. She could see that it was him, and she was pretending, and she realized that he needed this and whatever. Yeah, the whole thing is a show. It's all tickets to see a show.
Rabbi, this is the Torah.
Yeah,
the Torah talks about it.
Right.
So why would be a sham if it's in the Torah? Like the Torah is saying, you cannot do it. You cannot talk to these 2 type of people.
Yeah. The big question on the Rambam is from the necromancers of Paro, because that's exactly what you're asking. How could it says over there when Moshe Rabbeinu told Aaron, send forth your staff and it will become a snake. So it says that Paro's people, they did the same thing. They sent forth their staff, it became a snake. Rabbeinu Moshe, Harambam, how, according to you, there is no such thing as sorcery. It's all phony baloney. So how do you explain that? Believe it or not, the Rambam says, you know how he explains it? It's amazing. He says they had the good, the Chinese dragon, where you've got like 50 people in this huge long thing and everyone's like going back. He says that was the snake that it was the good old costume. They had something that pretended like it was a snake. It wasn't real. That's the way this is the opinion of the Rambam. The Rambam is all the way through. That was how he believed. The whole thing is phony baloney. That was the Rambam.
You don't think you make a mistake?
What?
You don't think Rambam?
1 second, we have a lot more opinions to go. We have a lot more opinions to explain. What?
זה היה כמו ווד ואחר כך חזר לווד, והווד אכל את הסנק.
Correct. Again, the Rambam's opinion is like that in every single aspect of the Torah. I can give you endless examples where you have a story that the Torah says clearly this is what happened, and the Rambam says it was just a dream.
How about the opening the Yam Suf?
So that was real.
Oh, that was real.
Yes. Okay, that again, it's not me. It's not me. This is the This is the Rambam,
so you're saying
right?
the Rambam
Okay.
contradicts the Torah?
No, he's explaining that this is what the Torah means.
Oh,
That's the way the Rambam learns.
He's
Now-
not funny, and you don't have to accept.
Now,
okay.
He's
Yeah.
not funny.
now, that was the Rambam Shita. Now, again, Rambam was tremendous. Le'elo le'ela. We don't even understand the Yirat Shamayim. So let's go now to the next opinion. The next opinion is that no, this indeed was that the sorcery really does have a powerful effect. That seems to be the opinion of the majority of the Chachamim, that the act of sorcery indeed does have a very powerful effect. The question is, how could you actually bring back the neshama of Shmuel through this kind of a practice? What exactly is it that you're doing in order to bring up this kind of a practice? How does that work? Meaning, technically, you're offering up incense to this thing, and then, meaning, let's assume that it does work, but from a technical standpoint, what exactly is it that you're doing to achieve this? So that is the question that Rav Hai Gaon and Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, period of the Gaonim, they answer. So let's read what they say. He says like this: Rachok hu sheteda haisha ha'atidot. Very unlikely that she would know the future. V'chen shetechayet hamet b'chokhmat tov. It's very unlikely she would be able to bring life to a person through this type of thing, to revive the dead. But he says, you know what happened over here? Really, the Ovnei Doni, normally speaking, they don't have that ability. He says, but over here it did happen. You know why? Ach Hashem itbarach hechaya et Shmuel kedei lesaper leShaul et kol hakorot ha'atidot lavo alav v'haisha lo yad'a bechol ele klal ve'al ken nivhala v'tza'ata. So the opinion of Rav Hai Gaon and Rav Saadia Gaon, these are the generation before the Rambam, they said that really there's no real technical way to bring back the dead from this kind of thing. It doesn't work. But over here, Hashem saw what they were trying to do. And Hashem wanted Shmuel's neshama to come through this act and then tell Shaul what's going to happen so that they should be scared and that they should go through this and die the following day. So really, it doesn't work. But in this case, Hashem wanted it to work.
But it's an
Understand?
opinion. It's not,
Again.
there's no other proof.
Okay, again,
If
it's how you
Hashem
explain.
wants Shaul to know something, he can talk to him directly. In
Correct.
his mind.
Correct. That's right. But the point is, Hashem didn't want to speak to him directly. That's the way that they're learning. Now. Because he had a whole history over here. Now, the last opinion here that's brought down is that it works in general, but only within 12 months. And since over here Shmuel was within 12 months of having died, so he's still in limbo-ish, and that's why it works. So over here you have a bunch of different opinions, whether it works or not. Again, the Rambam is way out there. He doesn't want to believe in it even for a second. But many disagree with him. The Ramban disagrees with him, and the other opinions over here disagree with him. So we have a lot of disagreement on this exact subject. But one thing is for sure, Shaul definitely did get the message, one way or another, and indeed it ended up happening. He was killed the next day. He died the next day in the battle, which is a very scary thing. But it's amazing to me that in his name, Shaul is Shoel, that he asked this question. He ended up his life asking this question to the Baalat HaOv, which is a very amazing thing. So, but that's what the message of the Torah is. Tamim tiyeh Hashem Elokecha. Just go with Hashem. You don't need to worry about things that are not. In other words, use your emunah in Hashem to move forward in life, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will guide you. I'll tell you a true story about myself. Very interesting situation. I was once spending Shabbat in Maryland, and we were. I read from the Torah over there, and they told me that there's a guy that just got married this week. He just got married. It's a Shabbat Chatan. So we give the guy an aliyah. I said, great. So they gave the guy an aliyah, and we were singing for this guy, Yismach Chatani, and the whole thing. It was a whole celebration. Fantastic. We give the guy an aliyah. And fantastic. We go downstairs. they asked me to say Kiddush for the whole shul. I said, great. And they said everyone should wash, Sheva Brachot, and the whole thing. I said, that's great, fantastic. I say Kiddush, and I'm sitting next to the Chatan, and his Kala is standing right next to me. And I can't tell you what happened to me. I have no idea what happened. But all of a sudden, I started thinking to myself, is this girl Jewish? True story. Is she Jewish? No, she looks Jewish. Everything is normal. But something inside was telling me, I don't think this girl is Jewish. Yeah. I go to somebody in the shul. She was covering her hair, so I figured she's an Orthodox lady I can, have a conversation with. I ask her, is this girl Jewish? She says to me, it's complicated. I said, what's complicated? I said, well, her mom had converted many years ago, but she was conservative, meaning she didn't do a real conversion. I said, uh-oh. Now again, did anybody tell me anything? Did I go to an Ov or Yidoni? No. Hashem sometimes helps you to understand certain things just by Hashem wants you to know something right now. I can't explain. No, that's the whole reason for me telling this story is to tell you that I'm really not, that I don't know these things. But sometimes the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives you a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a feeling, and you have all of a sudden a question. So that's what I'm saying. Tamim Tiyam Hashem Lodecha means HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. Hashem is running to be aware of what's going to happen. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to strike gold, you're going to strike gold regardless. You don't have to worry about these things. That's the key. That's what it is saying over here. You go with pure faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and what needs to happen will happen. And you don't have to worry. And that's what we're learning over here. All right, guys, we'll stop over here. Chazakim Buchim. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us on Zoom.
Thank you.